Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As Jenny mentioned, my name is Josh Jacobowski. I am the Data Analysis and Information Systems Director here at the Department of Local Government Finance. I'm going to be going over in this webinar the different processes that we have here during the Spring Data Compliance Review for the 2023 fiscal year. Oh, sorry, need to push that. Okay, so first off here, just to kind of give you a heads up on what's going to be coming your way. Here's the agenda for this webinar. It's split up into 4 parts for the most part. We are going to be reviewing those first 2 sections, which I think are going to be a little bit more relatable to folks who are in a county auditor office. We'll be talking about how to get your property tax data submitted here to the department and to the state. And then once we have that data, or once that data has been successfully submitted, we'll be talking about what sort of items or checks that the DLGF does in looking at the compliance review process and making sure that the data is clean and then usable, and we can then upload that into Gateway and get that completely set for you. Again, we're welcoming everybody to this, but as I mentioned there, the first couple of bullet points is going to refer more to folks in the county auditor office. The third bullet point will actually switch gears a little bit, and we'll be talking to, or the people who will find this the most relatable will be folks in the county assessor's office, as we're going to discuss how the real and personal property data that was submitted to us back last year, in the fall of last year, ties into the spring compliance review process. Lastly, the last thing I'd like to at least point out or show folks is how members of the public can then access this data, the property tax data that gets submitted to us from Gateway, as well as just all kinds of data and information that we have available on the Gateway website. I want to also reiterate or just mention that please, if you have a question at any point, type that into the Q&A box in the chat feature of the Teams application. I'm new to my position. I'm still learning an awful lot, so I may not be able to answer your question right away. We've got a lot of knowledgeable folks here at the department that I can always. I'm sure I will be able to track an answer down for you. Please ask questions if you have it. Go ahead and type them into the box as the webinar proceeds. I'll try to answer questions at the end to the best of my ability. And like I said, if I'm not able to answer it, I will be sure to get that tracked down for you and make sure we get you an answer. Okay, so I'm going to dive into this first section now, which is about submitting property tax data to the state. And just a quick word, not word of warning, but just so that you know, I may refer to this sometimes as abstract data throughout the presentation. This is what I'm referring to, is that property tax data that gets submitted to us. The way that it gets submitted to us is through a Gateway abstract application. So internally here at the department, we often call this just the abstract data. So apologies if I kind of go back and forth between the two, but that's what I'm referring to on that. Hopefully, what's coming up here in the next few slides will serve as a recap for a lot of folks that are in the county auditor's office who have hopefully already done this, as today, March 15th, is the deadline for getting this data submitted here to the state. So if this is something that you have already done, again, hopefully this will serve as a good recap and just hopefully, really get it in your brains for next time around. It'll be nice and easy. If this isn't something you have done, I would encourage you to get that done as soon as possible, as today is the deadline for it, getting that property tax data submitted to the state. Okay, so before I dive into that process, I want to just very briefly talk about the history behind the Gateway Abstract application. So I mentioned that I'm new to my role, but I actually joined the department back pretty close to this beginning of this in the 2019 timeframe. I was the controller and financial analyst for the department, and it was my responsibility then to handle our internal budget and make sure that we had the money to be able to fund these different projects and fund everything that needed to be funded throughout the agency. And one of the big things back in that point in time was the Gateway Abstract application. So I had an understanding of what we're trying to do here. I've heard horror stories from folks from before the application was launched about a huge Excel template that was sent out to county auditors, and they needed to fill out different pieces of this huge Excel file and then send that back to the department. It was just a very cumbersome and almost kind of difficult process to make sure it was done right. One of the big projects was to get the Gateway Abstract application online, and that happened during since the Pay 2019 cycle. We have had that up and available for folks to serve as a mechanism for helping people or helping the local units to submit their county's abstract data. Instead of just typing stuff into an Excel file or typing data into an Excel file and sending that back to the department, we instead have the county auditors ask their local tax and billing systems and then generate a series of text files that just get uploaded straight into the system or straight into Gateway Abstract. I'll mention a couple of times here throughout this webinar, I'm a very visual learner, so I'll try to have some screenshots of that and how that process works in the coming slides. But that's basically the big change there. These will all be uploaded into the system via an online process, this Gateway Abstract application. I think in the past also, there were a couple of files that still needed to be emailed in to the department or to LSA back when we were working on this jointly with LSA, the Legislative Services Agency here at the state. That is no longer the case. So we do not need you to email the tax data and the adjustment files into us anymore. That just gets uploaded into Gateway Abstract. It's part of the text files that package that gets loaded in. I think there are, well, I know there are 7 files that get loaded into that, and you'll see that here on one of my screens coming up. So after those text files have been successfully loaded, and again, I'll have some screens kind of walking us through that process. There's some calculations that can be done almost just automatically within the program at the push of a button. And I'll again have that screenshot available, but it's a nice feature that allows you to click that button, run the calculations. For some of the larger counties, it does take a little while. It can take like a couple of minutes because there's a lot of calculations and things going on behind the scenes there. But it will then have those results available and do that automatically so that you can review those results in Gateway. There will be various screens again, and I'll try to have some screenshots available there. But there will be some various screens that will allow you to review those sections and review the results after we run those initial calculations. So you can see, if there's something that needs to be corrected here, or maybe further down, there's something else that went wrong. We'll have that available for you via the application itself. Finally, the Auditor of State's office is the one who will actually review this submission and ultimately grant final approval of your abstract data. Once we get the go-ahead, or once we get the thumbs up from the Auditor of State's office here at the state, that's when the department really goes to work on it and starts looking at the data and checking the different compliance review checkpoints that we have for it. And as I mentioned earlier, just kind of a final bullet point there. The deadline for this submission is today. So if you have not already done this, county auditors, please make sure you look into that as soon as possible. We're wanting to try and move things along. It's one thing I've definitely learned here at DLGF. You want to keep the process moving here, and this is the next step in the chain is getting this abstract data into us. All right, as promised, I promised some visuals here. Here is a screenshot of the Gateway application when you get logged into the system. So I actually gave a webinar last month that was like Gateway 101, trying to get folks their first taste of the Gateway application and point some things out and where they would go. this is the side of Gateway in which you have signed into your account as a local official. And then once you've gotten logged in with your Gateway credentials, you land on this page, which has all of the different applications listed within the Gateway portal. The Department of Local Government Finance, we have the biggest one. It's over there in the kind of the top left with that green banner. But the arrow pointing you to, hopefully that you see there, is the abstract link that you will click on to get everything set or everything submitted for this Gateway abstract process. So again, this is the landing page. Once you have clicked on that landing page and selected your county, you should see something that looks like this. This is the initial kind of home page, if you will, for the Gateway abstract application. So I should point out that before we're going to be talking about a lot about the file submission and file uploads in the next few slides, but really the first step in this process is actually that pre-abstract survey. If you can see it along kind of the left menu bar there, it's the third one down. Pre-abstract survey needs to be filled out and completed before any of your files actually get uploaded. So that's step one, is that pre-abstract survey. And then step two is going down to that file upload link and uploading those different files that I mentioned earlier, that I mentioned the number of them. There's 7 files that you're going to need to make sure you get uploaded. So when you click on that, it goes to a page that looks like this. And that's a fairly easy process. You select the file there up at the top, you go up to choose file, and then you upload those 7 different files that we need to run our initial calculations and, well, all of our calculations here at the department. So there's that TIF tax, TIF sum, adjustments, TIF tax supplement, or TIF tax sup, AB certified rate, AB tax support, and then the tax data file. So those 7 files need to be uploaded before we can do any other kind of work there. Once you have those uploaded, what you're looking for, well, sorry, let me back up just a little bit further. Once you click a file and upload it, there's a couple of initial just automatic steps that happen to make sure that your file is in the correct format, that it's got a header row that we're looking for, just kind of the overall structure. If it doesn't allow that, then you're going to get some, like, a red spot on your screen, or, well, I'll show it on the next one, on the next slide, but it will pop up and will show you that you couldn't have uploaded the file. What you hopefully will see, if all the 7 files load correctly, I'm going to go to the next screen, it looks similar to this one, is this, where you've got those 7 different files that have been uploaded. You've got green kind of squares there next to them, or rectangles, that are showing that those files have successfully been uploaded into the systems. Once you've done that, once you've uploaded those 7 files, and there's no red there or anything like that, the files themselves are fine, they're in the right format, you click on that middle button, Run Calculations for Upload. And I was talking about this a little bit earlier. This starts off kind of that initial behind the scenes process that our application runs for you, and you'll be able to see some results right away. Reiterating that's a heads up that for those larger counties out there, when you push that button to run calculations, it will take a little bit of time. It may take up to a couple minutes for it to spit everything out and have that ready to go for you to look at. But once you have that uploaded, the next section you're going to want to go to is the county review section. So along that left side, there's the abstract sections that will have the different information there, where you can look up those different analysis of the abstract data. In this county review section, once you check through each of those abstract sections, the county review refers to, so this will be all the way down at the bottom along the left side there. My screen wasn't big enough on my screen capture. Sorry, I should have gone down a little bit further. But there's the different, you can see along the left side there, there's the different abstract sections that will give you information or give you that feedback, that initial feedback from the automatic calculations that were run by the system. And then further down on that left side, there should be a button there that will allow you to select county review or review or something like that. It's at the bottom on that left side there with the blue boxes. Once you've clicked on that, it will bring up a screen that looks like this. And this refers to certain checks that have exceeded the allowable tolerance that is set by the Auditor of State's office. So for this particular county that I selected randomly here in the system, excuse me, there were 9 things that went outside of the threshold set by the Auditor of State's office. What they ask you to do there is for each one of these, and you can see each one kind of starts with that green box, and then it outlines the different, or the issue that was found by the system. And they're going to want you to type in a response there to what was found. So underneath there in that county response box, you would type in your response as to why this particular error occurred, or what's going on here, or whatever. And then that will be taken into account by the Auditor of State's office. But we need you to make sure that you fill that out, that county response, for each one of these different checks that went beyond the comparison thresholds. What you're looking for there is, or excuse me, I'm ahead of myself. Next slide. What you're looking for on this, again, green means go. Green is good. You'll want to look for those green check marks next to each one of these different sections. If anything is red, you're not going to be able to advance any further to the page that you go to actually kind of finally submit all of your data or all of your processing. It's uploaded at this point, but you haven't clicked the button to show that you're done. Excuse me, I need a quick drink of water, or it's getting a little dry. Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, green means good. If you've got green check marks all the way down, you're good to go. There should be one more section, again, one more blue box down there on the bottom left. This is what you're looking for to actually, the final piece of the puzzle, if you will, the final thing that you need to do to make sure that your abstract has been completely uploaded and submitted. You need to check that box there that in the middle where I acknowledge that all abstract sections have been reviewed and confirmed, and the abstract is ready to be submitted. Once you've done that, you include your name, title, the PIN number that you have for Gateway, as well as the date, and then it will be sent along to the Auditor of State's office. The Auditor of State will be the ones who will fully review the abstract data that is submitted, along with any additional follow-up or questions. They should be able to answer questions on it as well. But again, that then goes over to the Auditor of State's office, and then once we get the green light from them, DLGF starts going to work on the data as well. Okay, so that first section, we're moving on to the second section now. That first section talked about how you get everything submitted. This section will talk more about what we do here at the department, what the DLGF does with the data that we receive, and all the different compliance checks and things that we're looking for when we receive that data. So I hinted at this earlier, I believe, but before we got the Gateway Abstract application online up and running, it was a much more clunky process in terms of getting the compliance reviews completed. It was a joint effort done by both LSA and the DLGF. We would work together to complete these compliance reviews. Now that we have this Gateway application online, everything gets submitted via this application. The DLGF now serves as the primary agency in overseeing these compliance reviews. So it's all on the DLGF now. And one other thing to point out, though, unlike the real and personal property data compliance reviews, so the reviews that the data that gets submitted to us in the fall, This is the only time that we will get the property tax data sent into us via this gateway abstract. There's not going to be a second part to it or anything like that. It's just one phase here in the spring. After the county auditors have uploaded their property tax data to gateway abstract, that's where we go in and kind of check and make sure that things look right. So I highlighted kind of what happens there when you push that in the application itself. When you push that run calculations button, it's going to do a number of things. The system is going to do a number of things on its own that the data division doesn't have anything to do with, or well, doesn't have anything. It's going to do all of that automatically. So these specific checks right here will be done within the system. And again, it gives you that automatic feedback feature right away from the application itself, but it will run different checks. The first one being a parcel and property record number format. That's a really easy thing to spot or for the system to check out. If we don't have that parcel and property record number in the correct format, it's going to highlight that right away. I can't remember exactly, like 18 digits or something like that, but it checks that automatically, makes sure that it's in the right format. If not, you get a flag and you're automatically, or you're able to take care of that hopefully right away. It also checks for duplicate parcel numbers. Each parcel number obviously should have its own unique code to it. If there's a situation where we're seeing that happen more than once, the system will automatically flag that. Again, each line item, it should be assigned a state assigned tax district. So that gets checked within the system. The system also kind of behind the scenes checks those on invalid property type codes, as well as invalid adjustment codes that are in the adjustment file. And so again, that adjustments file contains a complete inventory of all of the different sort of changes that get made over the course of the year, the exemptions, the deductions, the credits that are associated with the cycle are in that adjustments file. So that's an important check that is done again right away behind the scenes and gets that validated for you. We also check lastly for any invalid TIF district ID formats. Those TIF districts need to be uploaded, or that's one of the files that gets uploaded. I can't remember exactly which one it is off the top of my head, but that's one of the checks that we run there in the background. So even if I think just about every county's got TIFs nowadays. If not, there's still a file that needs to be uploaded and it checks in there for you. Okay, so that's the previous slide was the one that are done, or the checks that are done automatically right away within the system and gives you that feedback initially within the abstract application itself. Now I'm going to get into some of the other checks that we perform separate from the gateway abstract that my data team works on and checks and makes sure that we go through. We have our own methods for going through this and checking these in the different files that get uploaded to us. One of the things we're going to be checking for sure is if there's any negative and or non-numeric assessed values. So any AVs where it looks like just a typo occurred, or we've got a negative amount in there, or letters instead of numbers for the AVs, that's something that we go through and check to make sure none of that happens. We'll be checking where the taxpayer's name should be at in the different text files. If that's blank, then that will get kind of a red flag there. Any government-owned parcels, and again, that's a property class code between 600 and 669. Anything that's labeled as such needs to have an AV of 0. So, if there's any instances where that's not the case, that's something our team checks on and makes sure. The other exempt parcels that are not necessarily government-owned, so property class codes 670 to 699. So like the some nonprofits, all the different rules and how that works. We check on that as well. From my understanding, they're supposed to start out with a value that's greater than 0 in the system, but when the exemptions and everything is applied to it, it does bring it down to 0. So that's something that we check on as well. And then finally, there's 2 files that we kind of zero in on more than anything else. during this compliance review season here in the spring, and that's the tax data file and the adjustments file and all the different property tax cap additions that we look at there, all the different calculations we do. We do some calculations on our end to make sure that everything adds up the way that it should. A lot of different checks that involve those two files in particular. Okay, so again, as part of that process, we take a look at the parcel file that was submitted to us back in the fall versus the tax data file. And we're looking for, in particular, any missing records that are in either data set, discrepancies in the gross AVs. And so that's for the real property is where we compare it with the parcel file. And then in the personal property, we take the PersProp file that we received and compare that versus the tax data file. Again, the stuff we're looking for there mostly is any missing records in either data set or discrepancies in the gross AVs. Now, there should be some discrepancies, right, from the fall to the spring. So there's a very important piece of this that we look at as part of this review process. And this is something that we do need to have get sent into us via the department's data inbox, which I'll have here on the next slide. But we asked the county auditors to provide a copy of this particular document, and what we call it here internally is the lock modification document. It's it may not be named exactly that in your file system or in your tax and billing system necessarily, but I'll explain on the next screen here kind of what exactly it is that we're looking for. But this is an important document that helps us verify these discrepancies that we will see between the gross AVs in these files. So it should be set up. It's just a standard report. You know, all of the different vendors that got certified by the DLGF were required to have this document set up in their standard report set. So it will be available. Again, it may not have that exact name of that I'm calling it right now, lock modification document, but what it does is it provides us an inventory of all the property records that have had their gross AV modified between the time of the roll and balance, the time of the roll and balance process the previous summer, so during the fall submission, to the point that the auditor's office calculates taxes for the current pay cycle. Okay, and that is like our key that we look at in our comparison here of these different files that we've received. So it's very important that we receive this. I know that some counties have already sent it to us, and that's fantastic. I've got my team working on that right now, kind of organizing all those different files that we've received and making sure that we have one for each county and staying on top of that so that we're ready to go. And once we get the green light from the auditor's office. But if you haven't sent that in already, please do so. Again, that's at that email address that's down there at the bottom. The data inbox is what we call it, just data@dlgf.in.gov. Again, it's a very important document. We need to make sure that we get to it or that we have a copy of it rather, so we can begin our own review process for these property tax data or abstract data. Yeah. Okay. So when the department completes its review, so say we've gotten your lock modification document, we've got the data's been uploaded correctly into the abstract, we're able to get in there and complete our review of a county's property tax data. When we finish that review process, we're going to email the county auditor 2 documents with our findings. The first document, or the first one I'm going to talk about at least, is called the Property Tax Issues Workbook. It's going to be in an Excel file, format, and this looks much more. This is going to give you a much more detailed breakdown of the records that contained errors, basically, based on our different compliance checks that we run on our side of things here at the department. So it will have literally every single, you can go line by line, and it will have every single error or issue that we spotted. We'll be able to give you that feedback. It will be in that Excel file. The other file that you will get is a property tax compliance report, and that will be in the form of a PDF, and that will provide a summary or basically of all the different checks and things that we do here at the department, what the percentages were in terms of the AV associated with each check. And so basically it'll walk you through, it's more of a high level document that you can use to kind of see where your county is doing or how well they're doing for each particular check that we look at. And most importantly I think for what's going to matter most to all of you local officials out there is that very last thing. The PDF will contain your official compliance status. So it will be either one or the other. Actually, sorry, I'll talk about that a little bit more. I want to rewind and talk about the issues workbook before I get to that compliance status. So in that Excel file that I talked about first, the property tax issues workbook, it's going to have multiple tabs. It's important that you recognize that when you get that or when you get that email back to you. You open up the Excel file, it's obviously it's going to have a lot of data there that on the screen, but make sure you pay attention at the bottom. There's going to be multiple tabs separated out by the different checks that we do. And each one should provide a complete list of all the property tax records that we found that generated errors, either for sure was an error or possibly an error based on our check. When the data was run through the various compliance checks that we do. So again, we should have a matching tab at the bottom for each check that we run that will have feedback for you on every single issue or potential issue that we found in the data. The property tax issues workbook will contain the same parcel to tax data and purse prop to tax data tabs listed on the issues workbooks for real property and personal property distributed upon the conclusion of the spring compliance review process. So make sure you look for those tabs as well. Those should be available on that issues workbook that you get. All right, now this is what I was getting ahead of myself a little bit when I was talking about the actual, like the official status that you get on the PDF file. It's a binary thing. You're either compliant, good, green, if you will, or non-compliant, and that'll have like a red highlight to it, okay? If it comes back that your county is deemed non-compliant or your tax data is deemed non-compliant, we're going to need you to review those errors that are listed in that issues workbook, go back through your different data sets, make any necessary corrections, and resubmit it to us for another round of reviews, okay? Hopefully that's not the case, but it certainly, it's not a bad thing. It doesn't reflect poorly on you or anything like that. It just means that we need to get some things cleaned up before we can get you into that compliant status. But what you're going for is a compliant status issued here from the department, okay? If we do deem you compliant, then there's no further action that needs to be done by the county auditor in terms of correcting and resubmitting the files to us. You're good to go. You've reached your compliant status. You've passed this part of the check. However, we do highly encourage that the county auditor staff look at the items that are in that issues workbook, and determine what corrections can be done there or may be needed to the applicable records so that we don't keep running into the same issues year after year after year. So even though you get that compliant and there's nothing else that needs to be resubmitted to the department, to us, for this particular year, we do highly encourage you to take a look at things and clean up whatever you can on the other side of it. So talking about this review cycle in particular, the Pay 2023 review cycle, we're going to be keeping it the same. We're not changing anything up on you. The department is going to use the 3% tolerance level that we used last year. And what that means is, for those of you kind of newer to your positions, that 3% tolerance level, when we run a particular check, any of the errors that we find on that particular check are going to have an AV value associated with them. If the total AV from all of the errors that we're seeing for that one particular check exceeds 3% of the county's total gross AV, that one check will be deemed non-compliant, and that will need to be then corrected for that particular check. And then If there's multiple checks where that occurs, then we'll need for all of those different sections for those particular checks to be corrected and sent back into us. We haven't added anything new here to this particular review cycle. There's no new checks that you have to worry about this year. However, we're going to be using the same format that we did last year. However, last year, during the Pay 2022 review cycle, there were 6 new checks that were introduced, but they were only treated as a warning, okay? That will not be the case this year. These 6 new checks, and I'll go over them here briefly. You'll see the first 2 there is at the bottom of this slide. But these new checks previously were only treated as a warning if you exceeded that 3% threshold. This time around, if you're not under that 3% threshold, that error threshold, you're going to be deemed non-compliant and corrections are going to need to be made. So just as a quick review there, these 6 checks were on the tax data file. We were looking for any blank taxpayer's address. If that popped up, we definitely count that as an error. Again, in that tax data file, if there's any kind of invalid school corporation number, that was a new check last year that's going to definitely count this year. In the adjustments file, we run a check where we look at the sum of all circuit breaker cap buckets, and that needs to equal the total amount of adjustment there. If that's not the case, we flag that. Any record with a personal property adjustment code that is not a personal property record, that's something that we introduced last review cycle it counts, if you will, this time around. You need to make sure that gets corrected. In the sum of the circuit breaker cap AVs, circuit breaker cap assessed values in the adjustments file needs to be greater than the sum of the circuit breaker cap AVs in the tax data file. And then similarly, the sum of the total amounts in the adjustments file needs to be greater than the total gross AV in the tax data. Okay, so again, 6 newer checks there that we started up last year. They are definitely going to count this year. So it's not just a warning. If you aren't under that 3% threshold for these 6 checks this year, it is going to be something that you're going to be flagged for non-compliance on. So just a heads up on that. Okay, so I think that has gotten me through the first couple of bullet points that I said referred, or at least was more relatable to the county auditor's office. Now we're going to shift to that third bullet point from my agenda and start talking about the real and personal property data compliance. And there's going to be some overlap here, or some similarities between the last section that I just covered, but this applies a little bit more to our county assessors or folks who work in the county assessor's office. So the spring compliance review process of real and personal property, like what we're doing right now here in the spring, is really the second part of a 2-phase review that began in the fall last year. So last year in the fall, a primary review of the data set itself was conducted here by the department. It was shortly after the county submitted its data. We got the different real property files and personal property files sent into us, and we performed our review on those. You were given either a non-compliant status after our initial review there, and there were corrections that we needed to make, or you were given a pending status. And pending was what you wanted back in the fall because it's not complete yet, but you were good to go for everything that you submitted in the fall, so that now when we do our secondary review here in the spring, you can be deemed either compliant or not compliant. But again, it's that binary status is the way that we measure things. We're wanting everybody to be compliant by the end of our secondary review here. But we'll be looking at the auditor's property tax data that was submitted to us here in the spring versus what we got back in the fall with the property tax data. So it remains important, sorry, before I jump into this next thing here, but it's important there that lock modification document really helps to help us, make sure that we are able to check everything here. So again, please make sure get those in if you haven't already. The secondary compliance review of the real and personal property data in the spring is a little bit more limited in scope. We're not looking at quite so many different things and running quite so many different checks that we did in the fall. We're going to instead focus again on those parcel file versus the tax data file. Again, we're looking at any missing records in either data set, discrepancies in gross AVs, but that's the real property side of things. And then for the personal property side of things, we're going to be comparing stuff from the PersProp file versus the tax data file. So again, missing records, discrepancies in gross AVs is what we're looking for there. And we will use the lock modification document to help offset any discrepancies that we are seeing. So again, please make sure you get those into us. So the county auditor is going to get one email back. County assessors are going to get two. There will be one email that contains your real property review results and another email that will contain your personal property review results. So in each email, rather, you're going to get, again, two emails. Each email will contain two files that looks at, again, similar to the one for the auditor that we did. Excuse me, you're going to get an issues workbook for the real property, an issues workbook for the personal property in a different email, a compliance report that's in a PDF for the real property, and a compliance report for the personal property, again, in a PDF. Same idea here. The issues workbook provides that granular level detail where you can kind of get into the itemized breakdown of the records, if you will. And the compliance report is more of a high-level document that kind of give you a quick overview of all the different things that we've looked at and how your county is doing based on our findings there. So the property assessment issues workbook contains multiple tabs, which provides a list of real personal property records that generated errors, either certain or possible, when the data was run through the various compliance checks. Okay, that issues workbook sent after the review in the spring will likely contain more tabs than the one that we sent back in the fall. Okay, because the spring review includes the comparison, our analysis that we're running here between the real and personal property data and the abstract data. Okay, so just a heads up on that. It will have your data from the fall, but it will also have some new tabs on there for the most recent checks that we're doing here in the spring. So just something to keep an eye out for. Again, just not to beat a dead horse here, but like it's a binary status. When you are given an official status, you are either compliant or not compliant, non-compliant rather. If we are in a situation where we are non-compliant, it's the county's responsibility. It needs to review the errors, make those necessary corrections, and resubmit the data for another round of reviews here from our team. If you are in a compliant status, that's what you're wanting. That's the green light, green go, green means go. You don't have to do any further action. We don't need another submission to us. You don't need to send anything back to us. We don't need to run another check or anything like that. But again, we highly, highly encourage folks to go through that issues workbook and review those items that, that we pointed out here that are potential issues or are issues, and determine what corrections need to get made there so that we don't keep running into the same issue time and time again on different data submission cycles in the years to come. Okay. Last piece of it, I wanted to just at least talk about and give an overview of some of the different information that's going to be available to the general public. So in our Gateway application, or in the Gateway portal rather, all the things that get submitted to us from the different local units, we then turn around and make available to the general public on the public side of Gateway. So the Gateway public reporting site offers a variety of reports to the general public. You don't need an account. You don't need a login and password to access this read-only information. It's just available to whoever wants it. It's out there on the web on this Gateway portal. The information contained in these reports comes from the data that the DLGF receives. It's literally straight from what the local units of government give us, but we then make that available via the different applications that we have on the Gateway portal. So certain data files that county auditors, county assessors submit to us are actually just straight up available for download after we've done this review process and gotten everything loaded in there correctly. And I'll try to show that here. Again, I like my screenshots, so I'll try to show that here on the next couple of slides. So I mentioned that on my first screenshots that I had of the Gateway portal, that was with where the local officials get logged in and where you actually submit the different information. That's how we submitted all of the, or uploaded the files rather, into the Gateway abstract. That link is actually in the kind of the top right corner of this screen. So if you ever find yourself on this screen, you're at the right place, you're in Gateway. But if you're looking to upload something or fix something in Gateway, you'll need to log in the upper right-hand corner there, that where it says local officials, log in here. But this particular page, this landing page, is not something that anyone needs a username or password for. It's open to everybody. The general public can look up all this different information that is available for local government units. The two that I'm going to focus in on today, or at least give you a brief snapshot of, are the up across the top there, a report search that is available, and then as well the file downloads that folks can do, different taxpayers can do to look up different information for all the different local government units. So sorry, I should have gone back. I'm going to look at that report search first. So this is if you were to click on that report search, it would take you to a page that looks like this. Now, it wouldn't have the arrow on it, the arrow added in there to point to what I'm going to be looking at specifically. But as you'll learn quickly here, by looking up at Gateway, looking stuff up in Gateway, or if you haven't yet, or if you have, you should already know there's just a wealth of information here. There's tons and tons of different data and things that people can look up and find information on. What we're going to be focused on specifically, or that I'm going to at least point out to you, is that in this county abstract public reports, if we were to click on that link, there would be a lot of different ways that we could then take this data and kind of slice and dice it and look at those sections that we are wanting to via this particular link. So if I were to click on that link for the county abstract public reports, I would get something that looks like this, where there's all of these different reports available that is based on the information that we receive from local units via this abstract, via the Gateway abstract. So folks can look up like different AV summaries and gross AV summaries for different taxing units and so on and so forth. There's rate and levy reports, total taxes report, TIF reports. There's information on TIFs, TIF total taxes report, district summary, circuit breaker reports. All of this information is available to the general public. You just have to kind of go in and dig for it and get into the right place here on Gateway. But I did want to make sure that I pointed out that what gets submitted to the department by the local officials is then we turn that around and make it available to the general public. So this is just one small piece of it, but these are the different reports that are available to the general public. I'd encourage you or someone in your office to go in and just kind of look at this and have a look at some of the different reports and some of the different information that's available via this website. I mentioned also, again, so up at the top there, there's that report search link, and then there's also a download link. We make certain files available just straight up that we receive from the local units. So down there towards the bottom, at least, I've got the different property files that get loaded in to Gateway, and you can, as you can see there, I think that's alphabetically is kind of where it landed. There's a tax bill. You can look at the data set for a tax bill. You pick the year that you want, 18, pay 19, and then Adams County, I think, is the first one listed alphabetically, so that's the first one there. But you can look up any of that information or download these files rather for any of the 92 counties here in Indiana. And it's not the data set. I think there's, I think it's got, oh shoot, I needed to look at it. I should have done that this morning. There's like 4 or 5 different options there of the different files that we have available. But there's files that they will be able to download that, again, we receive straight from local units. Okay, I think, Yeah, that takes me to the end of my presentation. I promised folks that I would try to answer questions as best I could here at the end of this. Jenny, I might just kick it back to you. I can't see the Q&A box. If you don't mind reading them off to me if anyone had some questions.
Sure, we actually don't have any questions submitted. Oh, I'm sorry. We did have one submitted earlier. Are the real property gross AVs for spring accounting for the ratio study for that year? If so, are they then compared to the gross AV of the fall with the prior year's gross AV?
I don't know the answer to that completely. I don't think so. I don't think that it includes the ratio study for that year, because I'm just thinking about the different kind of steps throughout our process here at DLGF. Usually all of the abstract data gets submitted to us. We do our reviews on it. And that's before necessarily the ratio study gets approved. I will check though with Barry Wood, he's our assessment director, and make sure I'm understanding that correctly. So Jenny, I don't know if it's possible to take like a screenshot of that question and send it to me, but
yes. If you ask that question, if you could send me a note and just give me your name and email address, we'll make sure that we can follow up with you. It did come across as anonymous, so which is not a problem. We just want to make sure we can follow up with you after the webinar. And then we will leave it open for our chat box open for a few minutes in case anyone else has any questions. You can enter those in now. And just a reminder, we will be sending out an email later this week with the video, the PowerPoint, the presentation, and the CE form. And you can fill out that CE form. And if you're an assessor, you will submit that to Donna. If you are with another taxing unit, you would need to submit that to your governing body or contact your association about how to record that information. But we do appreciate you attending today, and we hope that you'll be able to see us and join us for our next webinar next month. But we will leave the Q&A chat open a little bit in case anybody else has any questions. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.